Well, Laura, Taryn, and Vania, thank you so much for joining me today. I've been really excited to talk more to three of the dance makers that I love to keep in touch with here in North Carolina. To hear a little bit about what your experience of being a dance maker during this pandemic time has been, and we'll talk a little bit about a workshop that Dance Project has coming up that I think is going to be really an exciting way to bring some dance makers together in a much needed way. So I'd love to start by having you first introduce yourself. Laura, why don't you go first?
Yeah, hi, my name is Laura Gutierrez, and I am a choreographer, performer, and currently teaching a bunch. And I am based in Winston right now, but I do work in Houston as
well. Vania.
Hi, yeah, my name is Vania Claiborne. I am, I understand myself as a choreographer. I like to make. My interest points are the Black cultural experience and ethics and faith. I'm based out of North Carolina, originally from Boston, grew up in Charlotte, that whole thing, making out of Greensboro right now. Making sometimes, which we'll talk about. Yeah.
And we're lucky to have Vania on our Dance Project staff, as well as one of our school coordinators and teachers. All right, Taryn.
Yeah, my name is Taryn Griggs, and I am a choreographer and dancer and teacher based in Winston-Salem. I'm from North Carolina, so I've come back and been back here about 4 or 5 years after being away for 20. So I'm really excited to be here and get to interact with Dance Project as much as I do.
Great. Well, I'm glad to have you all here on this call. I wanted to start first by talking a little bit about, like, what has your experience as a dance maker been like during this pandemic? What's it been like to make work or not make work? How have you navigated that? Laura, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, I think it's just been a larger roller coaster, bigger ups and bigger downs. I know in previous conversations with Dance Project, I have shared that, starting off in April, I think, is where my kind of marker is for pandemic. I didn't want to dance. I didn't want to dance at all. I was overwhelmed by, I think, the response of the dance community and the sense of everyone was wanting to, produce and create. And though that was really beautiful, and, I think it's what the dance community does so well, is gather and like continue to march forward. It was just not where I was at. I remember thinking vividly, it's like, I don't have insurance. I don't have insurance, and my money comes from project work. And I was kind of freaking out. I was like, if I do get sick and I do need to go to the hospital, like bills, like things like that were on my forefront more so than art making. And then I felt guilty. I was like, I'm not a good dancer. I'm not a choreographer. I should be hustling harder. So many people are doing it. So that's definitely how it started. And then I think throughout May, summer, I had more space to kind of allow myself to understand the pandemic and what a pandemic is, and then kind of get back in touch with my choreographer dancer mind. So that's how it started. Teaching has kind of helped. I've been doing that, but that was a whole nother roller coaster. I started teaching in higher ed, and it was like higher ed, and then pandemic, and then tape on the floor. And so it was just another learning experience. And it's just been a roller coaster. And I'll share right now that I'm most recently coming out of the craziest month. I ended up traveling for work back home, and me and my family, we got COVID. And so that was, I'm very fresh out of that. But one thing that I think is on my forefront right now is, or I'll speak for myself, I'm so willing to do anything for a good paycheck. And in terms of producers and presenters and those who are hiring us, I think it's just so important to pause. And even though maybe producing work is something we're all wanting to do and still trying to do, there is still life at risk and lots of other dangers. So that's kind of where I'm at in a nutshell.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that perspective, Laura. And I'm really glad that you are healthy now, and your family is as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. What about you, Vania or Taryn? What has your experience been making work or not making work during this time?
I mean, I can share. It has been. I am a rhythms person. I like have to keep to some type of pattern in life. And once my rhythm of like being able to come in and have like practice, like my practice time, like my studio time, this is what I do time, just it threw off balance for me completely, just because I know me, discipline is not my my forte. It's like, how do you do dance and you're not disciplined? It's like, this is the struggle. So then it wasn't just like, oh, my physical rhythms of how I could make change, but just like getting out of practice is hard. But then for me, I'm realizing what I was actually missing, that just kind of clear-headedness and just in movement, and just that kind of like deep breath of just moving and figuring out what your body wants to do that day, and seeing what comes about and being inspired because you're moving. It kind of like filters itself. You're moving and you're inspired by the movement that's happening, and you're moving some more, creating, and then you're like thinking of all these patterns and however it's coming out, what you're thinking about, reading about, that space to kind of really, I guess for me, is a processing space. Like it's I'd say more of like it's a place to turn off the analytics of the brain, but let that happen in the body. And I think so much information was just like happening in the world. I physically couldn't process. I couldn't process it physically, and I also couldn't process it mentally or emotionally. Like I'm just like a slow, like, oh, I think something's wrong. Oh, 6 months later, oh yeah, something's been wrong. I think it just kind of all built up and been like, I didn't have access to the ways I process the world, and having a rhythm for practice, having that change, or just not be consistent, or have to be the kitchen, or have to be, the living room, a little spurts, little spurts when it comes, because you kind of feel a little blocked creatively. And also having all of those, like, at least for me, this year was supposed to be a pretty like, I don't know, a stepping stone year, I think, of some things that like had been provided out of 2019. I had been working and learning this thing. It had been my first full year doing the whole like independent artist thing. And then some significant projects had come up that would have kind of been like the stepping stone. And they all were like, within those first 2 months, like, hey, so pandemic. And I was like, cool. Okay, so we're no longer making to make a name. It's just not going to happen. I mean, that shouldn't be a motivation, or couldn't, whatever. It can't be a motivation for me, but also it's just really clear, like, if I'm really going to enjoy doing this for the rest of my life, it can't happen only in the parameters of gig and go and career build and go. And so what I think just was helpful, or just most eye-opening for me the most out of our conversation from the artist chat the first time, was like, man, I've been grieving that loss and I haven't been able to process that in practice, but now there might be an opportunity for that. And that just seemed really encouraging. Yeah.
Yeah. Vania, when I'm listening to you talk, I'm noticing, you're talking about, you're using all these physical words, like you know, the sort of clear-headedness and the space to breathe and the lack of studio space not allowing you to have those things. And it feels so representative of, I don't know, I mean, sort of where we are as a culture as a whole, you know, like we're not clear-headed. There's just too much to process. And I think too, you know, I'm reflecting on the different ways that I experience processing, that I really do experience it a lot in my mind, even though I'm a dance person. And so I really enjoy hearing you talk about what it feels like, what your experience has been like to not be able to process because it's been hard to be in your body in a space. Thank you for sharing that, bringing that perspective in.
I'll share a little bit about my year of making and unmaking. Yeah, I, you know, at the start of everything, like a lot of things that Laura and Vania just said really resonate with me. And when I was listening to both of you guys talk, I was also thinking about that my situation is just, I can't untie it from also my relationship, because I make work with my partner, and we met in 2002 at an audition, you know, like at the Trisha Brown Studios. He was holding the door as I walked through it, you know, like so at the beginning of all of this, we were kind of like, whatever, we got each other. Every time we've moved, we've started with just the two of us, and we just find places to make dance. And so like at the very beginning of this, and we live right by a university that had empty studios. So we were like taking family field trips for 4 hours into the dance studio and just like running around and being crazy. And that was really, really charming for like a month. And I have some great pictures of us in the studio, but also we had a purpose at that point. I mean, and I think, Vania, what you were saying, like, you know, we were working on a commissioned piece that we were certain we were still going to go do, because it was a few months away and this was all going to get sorted out and it was going to be totally fine. And about a month before that, like Chris and I were like looking at each other like, is this really going to happen? Like, things are not better. Like, is this really going to happen? And the producer was super cool, and they ultimately did cancel it like 2 weeks before, but it was out of state, you know, it was like halfway across the country at a festival that we were like, and so then that kind of got us a little bit down. And then we were like, oh, well, I mean, you know, festivals are still going to happen this summer. We'll have all this sorted out by then, certainly. So then we weren't working as much, but we were like, well, we should keep working because, you know, we have this other commission and it'll happen. And then that didn't happen. And I think when the summer festivals, at least for me, didn't happen, it was like, oh, like we're kind of we're in this for a while. And I think Chris and I both kind of just got really down. I mean, we got super down. And even if we could go into the studio, we just like didn't, like Laura said, we just didn't want to. And also I had to turn a lot of my creative energy into teaching, because it wasn't just about teaching what I'd always taught. You know, it was like, well, how do I make what I'm doing relevant on Zoom? Like, how do I make this not just a placeholder for an experience that I wish we were having, and make this a valid experience to be in? And like, so like, you know, I taught a making dances camp for little kids, and I spent so much time just trying to figure out like how to make the box fun, or how to, you know, like how to hold attentions. And so that really, I know for me, really, really took over my creative juices for a while. And I still feel like I'm in that place of needing to devote a lot of the time I would be thinking about making dances to thinking about teaching dance, which isn't a bad thing. And I've been trying to like reframe it as like a not take teaching as just a thing I do to be like to supplement my creative work, but that it can actually be my creative work, and that can be a really healthy thing, to give that as much weight as I do what I would put on stage or put in front of an audience. And yeah, I think, you know, Chris and I are coming back around to making things and dreaming of things, and dreaming of places to put them. And right now I'm still there. I'm in the dreaming place. I've not been as good at being in the place of practice as I would like to be. I'd like to get back into my body, but it's fun to dream too, you know, like it's necessary. It's part of what we do. It's got to be there. Yeah.
No, I think it's cool. I feel it resonates with me. Or I feel that, like, that dreaming part. So I think that's what it kind of was. It's like a dream killer early in this whole process, and then it just zapped all motivation. And then, you know, that's like the feeling as a dancer, to be out of your body, and then to like, oh, now we're dreaming again. It's like, oh God, now my body has to catch up. It has to catch back up. But we're gonna be sore again. Like, we're gonna go back through all of this. It's like summer conditioning all over again. Like, you know, I did sports in school, so it's like, you did nothing. And then like, oh God, the first 2 weeks of you do your sport, you're gonna die. I haven't been looking forward to that, but I am excited again to feel like, to be able to bring my full self back into teaching and think of that as a creative way to place some of this kind of, I would just say, energy that's just been setting aside. It hasn't been pent up, because it's not eager, but it's just kind of sitting there to be reformed and to kind of bring into maybe the classroom, and how to really kind of get that little glimmer of dream back in the eyes of the little ones. I think I'm excited about that. Like, if I can't, the energy used to be somewhere else, to just like transfer it to this place. But I feel that kind of dream spark. Yeah.
You both said a lot that resonates with me, but Vania, I think if I understood you correctly, you mentioned like you had this realization of, you know, that the freelance gig life wasn't going to be fulfilling for you. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, you know, that kind of hit home, because I think as a freelancer, we're kind of always on this wheel of, okay, we need money. Oh, but this performance is at this place, and X, Y, and Z, all of the excitement, but all of the sorrow that comes with it. And I feel like I've been there, a while now, and the weight just kind of seems to be a little more heavy. And then Taryn, you mentioned the teaching and approaching teaching creatively. And I think I mean, I don't have answers for myself or for anyone, but it's like this mentality of conditioning that we're so used to. And like, the gig life is the way, and teaching is to supplement your creative work. And that's how I've always seen it too. I also think, you know, the older I get, I'm not willing to do X, Y, and Z. I'm not willing to put my family in danger again just to have this gig or this nice paycheck. So that's just my 2 cents. So thank you for that, because that will help me after we get off of the Zoom.
We had to, the same festival that we were supposed to do last year. They are like, the producers have been so awesome and really lovely. And they wanted to reschedule it for this summer. And it was really hard, because we had to sit. I mean, we were like so excited. Like, the thought of going and being in this place with a lot of people that we really love was like buoying our spirits. And then I would like come in with the dream crushing like reality of like, yes, but we're still in a pandemic. It's unlikely we'll be vaccinated by then. we now have a dog and a 7-year-old, and we're not willing to all get on a plane, which means we're all getting in a car for 3 days to get to the middle of nowhere in each direction. We can't crash with friends because we can't, we don't want to put anybody at risk of what we might be bringing with us or carry something forward to the theater that we're going to. And I was just like, what are we thinking? We can't do this, you know? And so we had, it was also good though. It was good to realize if you don't ask, they won't say yes. And luckily we just said like, hey, would you consider letting us defer our participation for another year? We're really passionate. We're willing to do a lot of things virtually to help support the festival and you. We just don't think our physical presence makes a lot of sense for our lives right now. And they said yes. And that was also really, like, it made me feel really good about the community. And like, they could have just been like, no, we, you know, like, no, you know, but they said yes, and they were really understanding and really kind. And, but it was still really hard. It was really hard to be like, but I really want to go dance somewhere for people. Yeah.
Yeah, that logic, like, I feel like when it comes to dance, and I've said this, I don't know, I've said that I think sometimes pursuing dance is a curse, and I should I want to flip that perspective soon, but it's this thing where I told my parents and I told my husband, it's like, I love it so much. Like, I have never loved anything as much as I love dance. I am willing to get my butt on a plane, and like, it just didn't cross my mind. I was like, oh, it'll be fine, you know? And it's that logic that I don't know. I can't quite, I think with passion first and then logic comes a little later. But that always kind of leads me back into like, you know, dance is a business. It's our job. And as much, even in this past week, even as much as I priorly thought that I did have a business mind and I was able to advocate for myself, I am still finding myself kind of backwards on that ladder of like, no, I just want to dance and I want to share and I want to be with people. But Laura, we're still in a pandemic.
I had a conversation with Tommy Noonan of Culture Mill a week or two ago. We talked a lot about, you know, the pandemic sort of necessitating both a stepping back from our sort of normal pace of stuff, but also the necessity of noticing our own capacity in this moment, because we're dealing with so much that we just can't do. We can't take on as much as we used to. And he was talking about, you know, wanting to carry some of that forward into whatever the next normal is, in terms of, you know, not feeling like everything has to be happening at a breakneck speed, that like he can take time and he can really notice what he can take on right now and what he can't. And, you know, as you guys are talking about, you know, sort of reevaluating the dance gig lifestyle, are you envisioning new models, new futures? When you think about like, well, gosh, how does this work going forward? What kinds of things are you thinking about?
I don't know how you guys, I mean, I could be totally wrong about this. But I don't see the dance world changing back to like the company model for a while. Like, I think the reality of like, you know, you get out of school and you audition and you get into a company and then you're with that company for, you know, a few years and then you go into like, I think that we're going to see that. We've already seen it basically go away for so many people. And I think it's going to take us a while to rebuild things. And so I actually think that that kind of piecing together and gig an independent artist thing is actually I think that's going to be the prevalent model for a while, because I think even with teaching, I think like universities are having to cancel classes because of low enrollment and cut down on sections. And now we know that you can increase capacity by having a virtual section of a class. So one teacher technically could have twice the amount of kids if half of them choose to be online. So, that doesn't make me happy. I don't want to see that, but I think until we build some things back, I think that is just the reality. But that's a little bit pessimistic.
Yeah, I think, Laura, is that you? No, you go. I'll go last because I don't know if I'm really going to speak to the whole like industry.
You go.
Okay.
I want you to go.
I think like, I'm thinking more of it on like an individual level. For one, a book I'm getting ready to start reading is called To Hell with the Hustle. And I think I'm just realizing for me as a person, like I can't sustain an internally noisy, busy, fast life. Like it just like my internal life, I'm just beginning to value that more than the outside. And I think so much of like the arts and creative community has been throw yourself to the wolves until your knees blow out so you can make a name and then you can teach. And I'm just like, I don't think I want that for my life. I think I want to enjoy every aspect of dance making. And I think for me, it's not reevaluating rather than pursuing, because I'm also in a different place in the career. Like I'm in the building part, rather than pursuing every single opportunity that's out there, hoping that it just slap it on the resume and run yourself ragged just to say you did it so you can hopefully get to the next step, just isn't valuable to me anymore. Like I think I want to value a balanced life, a balanced livelihood. I want to value my community as far as people and my living. Like I want a holistic life that is balanced and to produce art from that place rather than just, kicking out stuff. And, I just have been listening or thinking I would get to this place by the time I was like, 45, 50 and, whatever, whenever the knees give out, whatever that age is supposed to be. But I think I just want to listen to that wisdom, and it's resonating with me so much because the more I'm producing out of that internal piece, I'm actually satisfied more with the work that's coming out, and I'm more excited to work on that work, and play with that work and revise. I used to hate the revision process because I was like, we're on a timeline, like it is what it is. We'll work it out and we'll keep it moving. But like I feel like it's fueling me to investigate the work and the process and the love of it for however it's presented, for whomever it's presented, and however far it'll take me. And I'm okay with that. I'm just willing to accept that model, even within the independent. Like I don't mind doing it as an independent artist with dancers and pickup work and projects. I just don't think I want to cram my life again into this one way of making to say it's full, to just prove that like I've had a dance career, and I don't know.
I have a question for you. So when you talk about that, how do you imagine that like translating to like paying for like life? Like, so do you, do you then imagine another piece of it is like having like a stable like income stream that's not dependent on making things? Asking for a friend.
It's fine. No, totally. I don't know. The answer is I don't know what that looks like because I haven't done this the whole time. But as of right now, the model for my life is, like I'm investing in the other soft skills. Like I'm interested in business and admin. And luckily, I'm able to do that in that way and facilitate programming and help in different ways to still be connected to dance. Luckily, like I really count myself lucky that my soft skills can still lie in the arts world, because I know sometimes people like it's completely separate and that's exhausting. But to be able to do admin in a way that can pay for life, but then also the gig work and the pickup work that is fulfilling and fun, but also like can help foster other projects. So like I don't know. I know there are some makers out there that are able to do that. Like I bless my friends. I love them so much. They got to do the move, but like I know they got there and their life stopped and had to go home because like you can't you can't pay rent anymore in a big city. So like, it's hard. So like I'm looking at the soft skills to build, to pay for life, and then to make dance from a full place, and just, I'm shooting for the long arc, you know, to wherever that may go.
Oh, you'll have so much good stuff to say, and I'm like emotionally processing as well. As far as model goes, yeah, I think for me it's just even hard to see it in terms of bigger scope of the dance field. But I do think, Taryn, I agree with you where it's, you know, the companies aren't, I mean, I want all the companies that are in place or so to appear to be in place. I want them around, and I want them to keep growing and all the good things. But I do think it's more of it will be an independent artist, freelance hustle. And with that being said, I think going back to teaching, I don't know if you experience this, Taryn, but the entire fall, I was just like, what am I teaching these kids? Like, there's not a dance field to go into. I mean, yes, there is, but it's just like, money's not there. Performances aren't there right now. Like, and they're spending so much money for tuition. And those thoughts just kind of were constant throughout the semester. And I think just like we all do, we kind of pull ourselves up and do it. So I don't know, that'll be interesting teaching this semester. And then model for, I don't know, myself, Vania, you're ticking so many things in my brain. I think, I don't know. We'll edit this out.
I don't think any of us do.
It's, you know, I wake up and I think dance. I go to sleep and I think dance. I dream it. And I try to tell like people who aren't familiar, it's like, it's just what I do. And though I do have other things, I got my Pilates training this past year. So that's another supplemental income and something I enjoy. I think if I had it my way, the things that I thought about within the last month or so, it's like, okay, I'm just going to move somewhere to a desert, get a reformer, have a tiny studio and plant there. And then people can just come to me. But it also, you know, I think back to like Jacob's Pillow and ADF. It's like there is something to it, to people moving away, opening their space. I think what Stephen Petronio, he has his new space, and like there's something about that model that is still true and still, I think, is a way for dance to kind of keep pushing. Mm-hmm. But of course we have to have money somewhere in it.
Oh, the money.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, I mean, part of what it sounds like you have found helpful in getting through these hard times is finding and making space for yourself. You know, Vania has been talking about, you know, being able to come back into the studio and have that physical space to process and to work and to reconnect with that creative self, and that's sort of what drove the idea behind this workshop that we're starting. Vania, you want to talk a little bit about what went into thinking through Makerspace?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because like two separate conversations were happening in our worlds, and then they kind of met, and it was like, oh, this is wonderful, this idea. But on one side, like me and a coworker who's also a creator, we're just like, man, when we weren't able to come in, we realized like, man, we have this big studio, like, and so then we just started kind of doing the one at a time, you know, figuring out, you're here, I'm here, you're here, because we realized we needed this like dedicated time for practice. just because it was available. I know that's not available for everyone. And thinking, man, that the community has kind of been itching for whatever point of contact we can have that may not be virtual, but is safe. So through lots of conversation and ideas and throwing things around, but like, what can we do? What's the bare minimum? What's the safest? What's the most giving? Kind of the idea to see if we could gather those who have been itching and kind of processing their creative life now differently, like we've all been talking about, for a space to have a touch point, like a cultural touch point, even though it's small. So people can move a little larger than maybe your living room. And if your living room is large, that's awesome. But if it's not, you're in mind. Move, but also just have a semblance of normalcy, like the practice of just taking class with another person that, you know, you can see their body in real time and see them move and just the synergy of being in the same room. Kind of get the idea, is like, man, but also as a creative, kind of the juices have been sapped, and a little, maybe our previous ways of practicing in process could use some revitalizing, could use some not tweaking, but use some changing. How does it look like? Does your process still work at home? Does it work with all of the cultural things going around you? Does it work with all the pressure, you know? So a place to kind of just rediscover our practice of making and just seeing where that would go. So the idea was to gather a small group, literally 5 or less, which is of course less than what the state have, but we know as movers, this involves breathing. So we wanted to use our largest studio and section it out to give people as much safe and distant space as possible to come in to the room as a place to just and honor each other throughout the week, to make sure we're staying safe so we can actually get to this sanctuary, if you would, to work and to create among other people, and to talk and have a touch point in community with the resources we had and the best possible veneration we could think of. And then turns out Taryn had the same conversation or a similar conversation about this with the coworker, and we ended up just somehow talking about it. And I was like, this sounds like a workshop idea we could do. So that's kind of on our end how the idea came up.
Yeah, and the model is that it's two weekends a month, 2 like consecutive weekends or Sundays, 2 consecutive Sundays, with a technique class time and then creative making time. Taryn, talk a little bit about how you're envisioning that looking and how it works. Like, you know, if someone signs up for the 2 consecutive weekends, how do they fit together?
Well, so I also want to tie it back in a little bit to what Laura was saying from our previous question, because it was as you were talking, I was thinking about this workshop. And when you were saying, like, what are we teaching? These, you know, like when we think about teaching, like, what are we teaching? Like, what are we teaching? What are we preparing people to do? And I think that's shifted for me in the last year, because I had always been like, well, technique class is to prepare one to do all of these crazy things. And there is no room for creative work in technique class. Like, that had always been like kind of my mindset, which I should say runs like head on into how my husband feels about technique class, which is like, no, technique class is to exercise my brain's ability to make movement. And so like, we're always like at odds, where I'm like, you know, like doing like plies and tendus, and he's like flailing around. And we have long conversations about the point and the point of technique class and what it is. But in all of this, what I've realized is that to prepare people for the world that we are in right now, that it is necessary to make space to be a little creative, or I believe it's necessary to make space to be a little creative in technique class, because as independent artists, like we have to do that. We have to have space to do that. So that's definitely been a shift for me. I mean, you also have to be able to leave technique class and do the things that is demanded of your body through the rest of the day. And I still believe that. But I've also made a place to have conversations in class that I used to just like scoff at that when there would be like talking in class. I'd be like, we could be moving, like, you know, but now I'm like, oh, but what's so important. It's so important to check in with each other. It's so important to talk to each other. It's so important to show up for each other and listen. Yeah, so sorry, that's a little tangential, but I was thinking about that when you said that. And it ties into Makerspace in the way of like being able to really do both of those things. So, and I also want to like put a little asterisk right here and say that if you show up, like I could throw all of this out the window depending on who shows up, right? Because it's, I think the coolest thing is it's going to be totally unique to the 5 or 6 of us that are there. So like I have a plan, and I also may totally check the plan if we show up and have a conversation and it feels like we need to go in a new direction. So, so we're gonna start and move together in a technical way to just kind of, I don't know, just to get moving, and also like what Vania was saying, like to kind of get that training element in again, like that sense of rigor and organization of the body, so that when we are done with that, we are ready to maybe take some physical chances that we haven't been ready to do. I've been kind of, I mean, I'll tell you guys what I've been doing lately. So I'm so excited to dance again. I bought a little trampoline and I just jump on it every day. Like I put my tennis shoes on and I tie them really tight, and then I jump until just to like sweat and feel my body move again. So I'm excited to abandon my mini trampoline and go back to organizing my body in a dance way. So we're going to do that. And then after that, I have a bunch of different ideas. And I apologize that I want to read something real quick, and I'm going to describe the picture that's underneath it. I'm going to show you guys, it's a picture of a sewing machine. I know you at home cannot see it, but it's like a diagram of a sewing machine. And it's from a book by Anna E. Parson called Dance by Letter, which is a 53rd State Press book. But it speaks a little bit, it's very short, but it speaks a little bit to what I imagine us doing in the second hour and a half. And it's A is for assignment. A is for assignment, an artistic errand, a task both generative and strict, a construct with limited rules directing the assignee to create material addressing a certain element of dance. A is for creating assignments for yourself by adopting the perspective that all structures in the world could be choreographic forms for dance making. So, which is just to say, like, I've collected a bazillion scores, and also just things that Chris and I have been using for the last 20 years to generate movement and make dances. And I'm excited to play with those. And so, and like what it might look like from one week to the other is also going to depend on what we collectively decide is important. So I think if people come in with movement they've already been working with, that we may decide we want to play with that thing they're already working with. Or we may decide we want to just generate a bunch of stuff in week 1 and then tie it together in week 2 and then put it next to each other and see how the things we've made speak to each other. So yeah, I mean, just kind of like lab style, like we're just going to pull threads and follow them in the unraveling and just see what we make. And I think although we are talking about generating work, I mean, we're not trying to finish any product. We're just trying to like spark things and talk about things and look at things again, and hopefully like just kickstart our capacity for making and yeah, and celebrating that we get the opportunity to do it. So I'm really excited, Vania, that you had this idea, and I'm jazzed to do this.
I'm jazzed. You're jazzed.
Yeah, it sounds really exciting. It sounds exciting from like an artistic creative perspective, but also like being together with other people feels like equally important in this moment where we have been so isolated physically in our processes. And So I think that's a really important piece of it as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
building that sense of community.
Yeah, I think I remember in some meeting along the pandemic, someone mentioned dance being a social activity, and I think I'm just now realizing how important that facet is for me, because I'm just by myself and I'm just dance mind. But in rehearsals, when I have other people just to kind of bounce stuff off of, or even if it's like, oh, this sucks, and then someone else is like, this sucks, and we're just like, yeah, we're in it together. Like that just it keeps me from going into a sadder place, or whatever. So yeah, this sounds great. I hope to how long? 3 hours?
Yeah, well, yeah, 2.5 hours. So
Okay.
people out there in the world, the first session day is February 14th. And then so Valentine's Day, can bring some love to the dance room. And then the second Sunday is going to be the 21st. It's an hour of technique and then an hour and a half of creative time.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's 1:30 to 4 p.m.
Very cool.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how this goes, to see what kinds of creative energy it inspires and creates, and I'm really grateful to you guys for putting this together, and I'm really glad to have had this opportunity today to chat with all of you a little bit about where you are in your in your thinking and dancing through the pandemic. As we close out, if you were to send one word out into the universe for 2021, what would the one word be that you want to send out into the universe?
Grace.
I was just going to say, I know it sounds like a really like profound question, but it doesn't have to be.
I have a string of expletives for 2020, but for 2021, I'm just going to say health. Mental, physical.
I think mine is chill out. Just chill out.
Right. Well, here's to chilling out, health, and grace in this next year. Thank you all very much for your time today, for chatting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.